Kira clutched a baseball bat tightly, her knuckles white with tension. The dim light of the basement provided little comfort as she huddled among the old winter coats in the closet. The sound of Barney's eerie "I Love You" song playing faintly from distant loudspeakers added to her growing sense of dread. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears as she tried to steady her breathing. The basement was filled with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the house settling and the faint hum of distant chaos. The power had cut off, plunging her home into darkness, and now she was surrounded by the suffocating blackness of the basement closet. Kira had barricaded herself in, hoping that the thick layers of coats would shield her from whatever horrors might come. Suddenly, she heard a distant explosion, then another, and another. Each blast sent a tremor through the house, and Kira squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to remain silent. The explosions were followed by a strange, sweet-smelling purple smoke that began to seep into the basement, creeping under the door and filling the air. Kira tried to hold her breath, but the smoke was thick and pervasive, and soon she was gasping for air. Her throat burned, and she felt a strange numbness spreading through her limbs. Panic set in as she realized she could no longer move. Her muscles refused to respond, leaving her helpless and paralyzed. She heard the distant sound of her front door being forced open, followed by the heavy footsteps of intruders entering her home. Kira's mind raced, desperately trying to think of a way out, but her body remained unresponsive. The footsteps grew louder, descending the stairs into the basement. She could hear them moving around, searching, their voices muffled and unintelligible. Each step sent a jolt of fear through her, the sound of their approach echoing in her ears. The footsteps paused near the closet. Kira held her breath, her heart hammering in her chest. She could barely see through the gaps in the coats, but she sensed the presence of someone standing just outside. The closet door creaked open, and for a moment, Kira was certain she had been found. But then the door closed again, the footsteps moving away. Kira remained frozen, her body still paralyzed as she listened to the intruders continue their search. She could hear them muttering to each other, their voices low and tense. Eventually they left the basement, the sound of their footsteps fading into the distance. Kira was alone again, the basement once more silent save for the distant song. She could still smell the faint scent of the purple smoke lingering in the air. Her mind was racing, filled with a mixture of relief and terror. The coats had saved her for now, but she knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. She needed a plan, some way to escape or to find help. Kira's muscles ached as the paralysis finally released its grip on her body. She slowly and cautiously uncurled from her hiding spot among the coats, testing her limbs to ensure they would support her. Her throat was still raw, and her head pounded, but she could move again. She gripped her baseball bat tightly, a sense of determination and fear surging through her as she prepared to venture upstairs. Her thoughts turned briefly to her parents. The realization that they had likely abandoned her stung, but she pushed the thought away. Survival was her priority now. Steeling herself, she crept up the stairs, her body low to the ground, trying to remain as quiet as possible. The house was eerily quiet, the power still out, and the only light came from the dim, overcast sky outside. She noticed the doors had been forced open, a chilling reminder of the intruders who had searched her home. Every creak of the floorboards seemed amplified in the silence, and Kira moved cautiously, her senses on high alert. Reaching the living room, she crawled towards the window that faced the street. She peeked through the blinds, her eyes widening in horror at the sight outside. The street was filled with people lying on the ground, their bodies twisted in unnatural positions. Some were on their backs, others on their stomachs, all paralyzed from the neck down. Their mouths were open in silent screams, their eyes wide with terror. Kira's gaze shifted to the figures moving among the fallen. They were grotesque, twisted versions of the once beloved dinosaur characters from Barney's show. The sight of them sent a shiver down her spine. These were the living dinosaur suits, Barney's followers, their felt and fabric bodies moving with unnatural fluidity. As she watched, one of the suits, a sickeningly cheerful triceratops, grabbed a paralyzed woman by the arm. The woman struggled weakly, her eyes pleading, but the suit was relentless. It forced a grotesque dinosaur suit over her head, pulling it down over her body. The woman screamed in agony as the suit seemed to meld with her flesh, her features distorting as the transformation took hold. In moments, she was unrecognizable, just another member of Barney's twisted congregation. Kira felt a wave of nausea and fear wash over her. She had to get out of the house, away from this nightmare. She didn't know where she would go or what she would do, but staying here was no longer an option. She backed away from the window, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed to find a way to escape this horror, to avoid the fate that had befallen so many others. Her mind raced with plans and possibilities, but all she could do was hope that she could find a safe place to hide, away from the chaos and danger that now gripped her city.